we use participatory photography. And that literally means it's photography by the people who are the subjects of the photographs or are affected by the issues that are the subjects of photographs. So if you think of it as kind of the opposite of the traditional photojournalistic model where photographers from outside the context, from usually the rich West, will go to somewhere and take photographs of a situation or of a people that are normally not given the voice themselves, takes photos of them, of what they see and of what they understand to be the issues, and bring them back. We try and reverse that by enabling those people to actually tell their own stories and to choose how they are represented. Our overall project model is to go and work with communities that are affected by issues. We work with them, train them in how to use digital photography to communicate the situation that they find themselves in and the messages that they want to share. And they create those photographs and captions in order to convey their voices to people who would not normally be even aware of them, let alone listening to what they have to say. Every project is different because we are not issue specific. We work internationally. We work with refugees, street children, with HIV positive communities, with mental health service users, with people who are marginalized for political perspectives, and many, many more. So the thing that grounds our projects and gives them a continuity is this use of photography and this use of participatory photography. So in order to do that, we have a number of different components of our projects that do crop up in every single project process. The first is helping people to understand how photographs communicate, how a narrative is created, and how understanding and empathy is created through seeing still images. We also use those, what we call visual literacy exercises, to stimulate discussion within a group and within a community. People find it a lot easier to discuss photographs and the associations they have with those images than they do just coming up with those observations and those personal insights themselves into a vacuum in a group environment. We then introduce them to how to use photography themselves, how they can create photographs to share what they want to say. Then there's the technical training, enabling them to use the equipment, which in some cases is starting completely from scratch. Most of our projects are working, most of our international projects, we also do a lot of work in the UK. Most of our international projects involve working with groups who have never held a digital camera before, and so this is an entirely new process for them. And in some ways that makes our job a little bit easier because we can introduce them to how photography is a form of communication from the point when they're first picking up the camera. Whereas if people are used to taking photos on their mobile phones, just taking photos, snapshots of things happening, they might already have pre-existing kind of ideas of being able to take photographs and why they might do that, and not actually realize the impact they're having through conveying something through images. We are experts in enabling people to use photography regardless of any obstacles that they might face that might be, for example, the reasons why we would be working with them. We've worked a lot with disabled groups. We've also worked with blind and partially sighted people. We have a number of projects beyond sight and sights unseen, if you want to look at them on our website, that are entirely about enabling blind and partially sighted communities to share their experiences and to join this visual communication. That's a tactile diagram that Jaime from Mozambique is using there to understand composition, and the process of taking photographs is something that we enable, and then sharing those photographs in the same way that we would do sharing and looking at each other's prints through describing or through these kind of tactile diagrams. We then provide support for our participants to create their own personal projects. And by this point, we have given them an indication of what they could achieve by sharing their perspectives and by conveying messages through images and through the accompanying captions. They're given free rein to focus on whatever they like, sometimes within certain parameters on a project, for example, an issue-focused project. And they're given space to go and do that on their own in their own communities. And this is where the self-reflective process of taking photographs and making a series of choices resulting in one still image comes into play. People might work in small groups, they might go individually, but they'll be choosing what to focus on, how to capture it, and what images to put with which words. And that is actually a really, really quite complex process of self-examination, self-reflection, and communication. And that's the kind of thing which wouldn't necessarily happen straight away in a group discussion, but when you bring those photographs that have been created through that process back into the group environment, it can be unpacked again from those images, and it can be a very productive and very revealing process, not only for those people that are talking to the participants, but to the participants themselves. The work then goes on into an editing process, and editing doesn't mean manipulating the images, it means selecting certain images to be used for public outputs. In some projects we have targeted outputs. We might be looking at feeding the voices of affected communities into decision making around policies and practice. We might be trying to change attitudes within the community where those people are marginalized. And in that case, there will be very specific messages that we'll be looking to translate through the images to those target groups. But in any case, we give our participants free rein to photograph whatever they like and to enjoy the experimental quality of images and to enjoy it for its own sake, because they don't need to reveal all of those photographs publicly. They can choose a small selection that there are no ethical issues, and which their confidence says what they want to share and conveys them in the way that they want to. So they only release to us, to PhotoVoice, and to any partner organizations that we work with, a selected selection of images and the captions that accompany them, and we will only ever use those. So it's an extra level of control that they have over how they're represented. So the kind of images they might come back with might be just insights into personal life, and again, just those things that they have chosen to focus on and share, that a photographer from the outside just simply wouldn't have the opportunity without crossing ethical or personal boundaries to actually capture. They might take a more dramatic view. They might find kind of ways to communicate what they want to share or what they want to say through something which is a little bit more symbolic or metaphorical or staged, like this. And then, of course, there's the captioning process, where we make sure that they are happy with the words that they have chosen to put with the photographs. And PhotoVoice means photo and voice, and it's absolutely vital that the photographs, if they are given an accompanying caption to explain exactly what the photographer wanted to say and what context it comes from, that accompanies the photograph. So this is actually one of our blind participants from a China project. And if you didn't have the caption and you didn't have the context, you might not realize the significance of this self-portrait to her. And then the last stage of a PhotoVoice project is the dissemination. It's where we carry those voices into the wider public, whether it's the local community. Sometimes it's the most important target community that we want to reach is the families and friends and peers of the participants. But sometimes it goes wider than that. We want to affect what the local authority are doing, what the government is doing, or what wider public perceptions are of that group. At the community level, these exhibitions, which are targeted for whichever group we're working with and whatever kind of format of exhibition is possible, brings together people from the local community, which is particularly important for validating the voices and increasing the status of the groups that we work with in that community. So exhibitions are the most obvious kind of dissemination, and most of our projects have some form of exhibition, if only to celebrate the achievement of the participants. However, in today's digital age, far more important is often the versatile ways that we can actually share the work, which might be online, through social media, if the target group that we need to access is actually able to access the internet. This was a project that just came to an end. It was aimed at amplifying the voices of young people in the UK and actually giving them a platform to be able to represent themselves, because media and to a certain extent political discussion had started to demonize young people in the way that they were discussing, as if young people were one amorphous whole. And in fact, all they were ever talking about in these articles were specifically the young people who were committing antisocial behaviour, or the young people who were victims of either that antisocial behaviour or some other kind of activity. And young people were never given the opportunity to represent themselves and to talk about how actually they viewed those issues and how they viewed the solutions to be possible.